this week, we have an author joining us, and her name is Emmaline Warden, and we have her for Romance Book of the Month. And so I was wondering if you could read just the first few pages.
Absolutely. Are we ready?
Yes.
Chapter 1, August 1819. The Earl of Everley was dead. Thank God. The bastard had met the Grim Reaper in his sleep at the ripe age of 66. An easy way to go for someone as terrible as him, but nevertheless he was dead. Margaret Reedy, Countess of Everley, watched the carriage pull away, the black plumes on the top of the horses' heads dancing in the wind as they merged into the traffic of Mayfair. Everley would be buried at the family estate in Salisbury, and Margaret, being a lowly woman, was not allowed to attend the proceedings. Not that she would have. Her husband was a miserable man who had made it his purpose in life to ensure her days were a living hell. No, she would bid good-bye to the arse from the front steps of their Grosvenor Square home. Then head inside for a nice cup of tea and some biscuits. "How are you, dear?" her mother, Lady Vearson, asked from the couch of the sitting-room. Her blue day-dress showed nary a wrinkle as she sipped from her teacup, her perfectly coiffed grey hair immaculate, not a single hair out of place. The woman had not moved from the spot since she had arrived that morning, and Margaret envied her carefree existence. But that was it. Her mother, after all, was married to her father, and that was a sentence she would not wish upon anyone. It had been her sire who had determined the trajectory of her fate, forcing her to marry the aged Earl, a man nearly 40 years her senior, and sentencing her to an existence of wretchedness that only death could save her from. Unfortunately for them all, her father was very much alive. "I'm well, ready for all this to be completed." She brushed at her black crepe dress before sitting and taking the proffered cup of tea from her mother. "The hard part is over, dear. The Earl will be buried, and once his will is read and Lord Harrison officially takes over the title, you'll be the Dowager Countess. Do you have any notion of what your settlement will be?" Lady Vearson sipped her tea so delicately at the question it set Margaret's teeth on edge. She shook her head. "Walter wasn't too forthcoming about what his plans for me were, once he perished. I'm sure he intended to outlive me." Her mother frowned at her words. The acknowledgment of the oppression she had been dealt at the hands of her husband was a topic her parents wanted little to do with. Just the mere mention of Walter's domineering personality sent them both into lamentations of her being overly dramatic. It had not mattered when Everley demeaned her in public, calling her all sorts of horrible names, and it certainly did not matter now. No, her parents cared very little for the well-being of their eldest child, only that she married well and gained a title in the process. After all, what were a few harsh words when you could be a countess? Margaret pasted a smile on her lips. "I can only hope Daphne's marriage is nothing like mine. It's a shame she could not come today." "What nonsense, Margaret! She's at finishing school, readying herself to become a nobleman's wife. That is much more important than sitting idly by as her sister tends to her husband's funeral." Lady Vearson glanced at the clock, but shook her head as she realised the timepiece remained unmoving because of mourning constraints. "I should be off. I have my monthly Orphan Society meeting. You should be grateful I was available to support you in your time of need." "Of course, mother. You're very thoughtful." The words left her lips with force, their necessity grating, given the circumstances. Lady Vearson nodded. "I am." She set down her teacup and stood. "Let me know once the will is read and you learn your fate. Your father and I will be happy to have you return home for the duration of your mourning. I know he is eager to begin the search for your next husband." Margaret bit the inside of her cheek to hold in her retort. Her mother did not need to know that she would never remarry, nor that she would rather live in a shack than return to her parents' household. No matter the outcome of the will, Margaret knew this was her chance for a new beginning, and she was not intending to let it pass without a fight. Maybe we leave it there. Does that
Beautiful.
sound right?